Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a late summer evening in 1972, where the air smells like freshly cut grass, your knuckles are scraped from riding that rusty Schwinn too fast down gravel roads, and the only thing that matters is whether Rachel Martin shows up at the lake before sunset. You probably won't survive this one with your tear ducts intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I always love seeing the global bedtime crew show up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 17. The town is small enough that everyone knows where you buy your groceries, but big enough that the football team still gets its own float in the 4th of July parade. You work weekends changing oil at your uncle's shop. Your parents call it character building, though you're not entirely convinced you need character when all you want is to save up for a half-decent stereo system. Rachel Martin is in your history class and she wears her hair in a braid with a ribbon like she stepped out of an old Norman Rockwell painting. She reads Sylvia Plath voluntarily. She's the kind of girl who sings in public if a good song comes on, and once brought you a sandwich from home because, in her words, you chew like someone who forgot to pack a lunch. That was the first time she smiled at you, and, like a sucker, you've been chewing nervously ever since. By July, you two are inseparable. You ride your bikes down past the edge of town where the railroad doesn't run anymore and the trees start thickening like they're trying to keep secrets. There's a lake out there, technically more of a pond, but Rachel calls it our lake, and so it is. She brings peanut butter sandwiches and grape soda. You bring cassette tapes of the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel. You lie side by side on a sun-warmed dock with splinters in your elbows and no sunscreen in sight. Fun fact, ancient Egyptians once used crocodile dung as sunblock. You decide Rachel smells slightly better. "This is what forever feels like," she says once, eyes closed, lips barely moving. You don't even pretend to be cool. You say, "Yeah," like your heart isn't hammering through your ribs. Your school offers college prep nights, but neither of you go. You talk about moving to Chicago, renting some crummy apartment with stained carpets and rooftop views. Rachel wants to study literature. You just want to be wherever she is. You think love might actually be this simple. Then, life shows up with a baseball bat. Her dad gets a transfer to Oregon. Some corporate thing with a timeline so short it might as well be teleportation. She tells you over strawberry milkshakes at Wally's Diner, and you try not to cry into your fries. You make all the big promises, letters every week, long-distance phone calls, saving up to visit her in winter. She gives you a picture of herself. On that doc, signed on the back, "Don't forget me ever." You kiss for the first time the night before she leaves. You don't remember who leaned in first, just that the world blurred around her eyelashes. It's like kissing a ghost you haven't lost yet. The next morning, you bike to the train station. Her suitcase is too heavy, her eyes too red, and the platform too short to fit everything you need to say. When the train pulls away, you raise your hand even though she can't see it. Historians still argue whether the 1970s were the last innocent decade in America, before Watergate and disco and Reaganomics kicked everyone in the knees. But for you, innocence ended the second that train left the station. "You write letters," she replies. For a while, they come every Tuesday, like clockwork, like church bells. But life gets noisy. Your uncle has a stroke, and you're working overtime at the shop. Her school loads up the homework. Replies stretch from 7 days to 2 weeks, then 3. One day, a letter arrives that says, "I think maybe we're both meant to grow in our own ways right now." You read it 3 times before realizing that's code for goodbye. You don't blame her, not really. But you also never throw away her photo. It stays folded in your wallet, right behind your Social Security card and that wrinkled receipt from when you bought her a ring pop at the county fair. That summer becomes the kind of memory you don't Talk about unless someone's had 3 glasses of wine and asks if you've ever really been in love. You tell yourself it was puppy love. But sometimes, on nights like this, when the sky is the same color as that evening on the dock and the cicadas are buzzing like background static, you wonder what might have happened if her train never came. And somewhere, tucked deep in your sock drawer, beneath a tangle of concert ticket stubs and expired library cards, is a cassette tape labeled Our Songs. You haven't played it in decades, but it's still there, just in case. You weren't born to be an actress. You weren't the type of person who dreamed of becoming a star as a kid. Back then, you wanted to be a preschool teacher. Later on, a baker. But life has its own way of smashing all those dreams. Your family was poor. Not the instant noodles for fun kind of poor, but the split 1 pack 3 ways, add an egg if you're lucky kind. Your dad left when you were in 8th grade, leaving behind your mom and a mountain of debt. Your mom worked 2 or 3 jobs at once, her face always gaunt like someone anemic. In high school, you started working part-time, at cafes, old bookstores, kitchens. You worked until exhaustion, your grades nosedived. You dropped out. Your mom didn't scold you. She just looked at you, sadder than any sigh. You once tried modeling for teen fashion brands. They said your face wasn't refined enough. Just an ordinary face, like rinsed rice water. Not ugly, but not striking. Then one day, someone asked, "Want to be in a film? An adult one?" At first, you scoffed, but later at home, staring at the electricity bill, suddenly it didn't seem so bad. You still remember that first casting. You walked into a room with 3 men. No one introduced themselves. They told you to stand in the center, look into the camera, and take your shirt off. You did it, hands trembling like you were possessed. They said nothing, just nodded. 5 days later, you got a call. No grand contract signing. No one asked, "Are you sure?" Everything flowed like a boat slipping loose from the dock. You told yourself, just this once, make some money, then quit. But you knew. You were lying. The first shoot was in a rented apartment. Small, dark, camera right in your face. You had to smile, moan, pretend to enjoy. When the director yelled, "Cut!" you jumped up and rushed to the bathroom to vomit. Not because it was disgusting, but because you felt like a toy that had just been used up. You couldn't look your mother in the eye. You didn't know if she knew. But once you saw her cleaning your room and finding a wad of cash you'd hidden in a drawer, she didn't ask. Just put it back and quietly walked out. Some nights, you lay awake, eyes wide open, heart pounding. No one knew. No one called to ask, "Are you okay?" Sometimes you just wished for a hand to touch your shoulder, not with any sexual intent, just touch. Occasionally, the crew would go drinking after a shoot. Male actors would invite you to karaoke. You decline. They'd laugh. You strip on camera but act all pricey in real life? You laugh too. But inside, you felt hollow, like a bag with a hole at the bottom. Once you asked an older actress, "Do you ever feel like this is wrong?" She took a drag of her cigarette, exhaled a thin line of smoke, and said, "Wrong to who? To the society that watches us and calls us trash?" Then she smirked and added, "Live for yourself. Don't expect anyone to understand." During one shoot, you had to lie on a cement floor, hands tied with rope. The scene dragged on for over an hour. When it ended, your wrists were bruised. No one apologized. They just handed you a bottle of water and said, "Good job." You laughed, not sure if from fatigue or absurdity. You once had a boyfriend. He worked in post-production. At first, he said he didn't care about your past. But one day, you saw a message pop up on his phone. "Are you seriously dating that girl?" After that, he grew distant, then disappeared. No goodbye. You learned to live with the emptiness. Smile when needed, sleep when tired. Dreams, those were gone. All that remained was a goal, money, But sometimes, sitting alone in your tiny rented room, hearing the sounds of traffic outside, hearing life go on, you wonder, what if I hadn't answered that first phone call? You don't have an answer. You gradually got used to the rhythm of this job. The filming schedule was packed. Some weeks, you shot 3 films back to back, each taking 2 days. You ate in a rush during breaks, slept on plastic chairs, then undressed again, acted again. But getting used to it didn't mean you weren't tired. Some mornings you woke up with your body aching like you'd been beaten, your mind drifting like it had just walked out of an exhausting dream. You looked at yourself in the mirror. No makeup, messy hair, dark circles under your eyes. Not the seductive goddess on the posters, just a girl trying to survive. You learned to split your mind in 2. One part for acting, the other to protect the fragile core inside. When the camera turned on, you switched into a different mode, like borrowing someone else's body to exist. And when it turned off, you quietly curled up, like a wet cat caught in the rain for an hour. One day, the director asked you to cry in a scene, but strangely, the tears wouldn't come. You stood there, staring into the lens, your face frozen, your mind blank. The director yelled, "Cry! You're an actress, aren't you?" You suddenly laughed. A small, dry, bitter laugh. You wanted to say, "I've got no tears left." After that, you bought eye drops. When needed, you'd put in a few drops and cry on cue. People praised your emotional depth. You didn't say anything, just thought, "Yeah, deep. As deep as the hole where I buried all my real emotions." You started gaining fans. They sent letters, gifts. Some even said they loved you through the screen. But you knew they loved the edited version, the lighting, the soundtrack, the idol image. As for the real you, they didn't know and probably didn't want to. A girl with insomnia, addicted to coffee, and scared of camera flashes. Once, you were invited to a late-night talk show. The host asked, "How do you feel when people call you cheap?" You smiled, a tired, slow smile. Then you said, "The money I earn isn't cheap. As for me, I'm just living the only way I can." The audience laughed, half supportive, half uneasy. The host laughed too, but his eyes looked away. When you got home, you opened your phone and saw thousands of comments. Some called you inspiring, others told you to get out of the industry. You read them all, not because you cared, but because you didn't know what else to do in the middle of the long night. You tried falling in love again. A former IT client you met at a charity event. He was polite, kind, never brought up your job. You felt at ease, but that very ease made you uneasy. One day you asked, "Aren't you ashamed to be with me?" He said, "I truly like you." You looked at him and nodded. But that night, when he touched you for the first time, you trembled. Not from desire, but from fear. Your hand pulled back reflexively. He paused, asked, "What's wrong?" You didn't answer. Just lay there, eyes wide open, counting each breath. That relationship ended after 3 weeks. No one said goodbye. It just faded out. You tried meditation, yoga, even visited temples. Once you met an old nun counting beads who asked what you did for a living. You hesitated. She looked at you, nodded, and said, "You can do anything, just don't let it consume your heart." You went home and thought about that for a whole week. By now, you'd filmed nearly 200 movies. Some even won awards. A few directors offered you lead roles in more artistic projects. But you knew, in the end, it was still your body being put on display. Artistic or not, the camera still rolled. You still had to undress, still had to portray emotions someone else wrote. Once, during a shoot in the countryside outside Tokyo, you stood on a hill, looking down at the fields, stretching to the horizon. The wind blew, your hair flew, and your eyes stung. Suddenly, you felt small, like a speck of dust lost on life's film set. Everyone busy shooting, acting, chasing the perfect light, while all you wanted was a moment of peace. You asked yourself, if I died right now, would anyone remember? And you answered, maybe they would, but they'd remember the face on the screen, not the real person underneath. When you were 28, your mother was diagnosed with cancer. You got the news while getting your makeup done on set. The makeup artist asked, "Are you okay? Your eyes are red." You nodded, said it was an allergy to the powder, but in truth, your heart felt like it was being crushed. You wanted to call home immediately, to drop everything and run back, but the contract was signed, the scene was waiting, and the director didn't like delays. You acted out a scene pretending to be in love with a man twice your age. You performed while feeling humiliated, not because of him, but because of yourself. Because you were faking intimacy while your real mother lay in a real hospital bed, fighting for every breath. You finished the scene, not a single mistake. Everyone clapped, you smiled, then rushed to the toilet and threw up like your guts were coming out. When you looked at yourself in the mirror, pale face, smudged lipstick, you whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." You flew home to visit your mother 2 weeks later. She was visibly thinner. Still smiling, she asked, "Are you eating okay? Work going well?" You nodded. No one mentioned what you did for a living. It was an unspoken rule between you and her. No questions, no explanations, just quiet understanding. Your mother knew, and you knew she knew, but she still cooked your favorite meals, still pulled a blanket over you when you fell asleep on the sofa. Sometimes love doesn't need words. Then your mother passed away. You didn't shoot another film for 3 months, not out of grief, but because you'd lost your sense of direction. She was the only one anchoring you to reality, a small anchor in the storm of emotions and work. Now there was no one to remind you to eat, no more texts saying, "Remember," to wear a coat. You began to drift. A familiar director called, offering a role in a new film. Good script, complex character, lots of emotions. You read it. The role was a mother who had lost her child. You accepted. When it came time to cry for the scene, you didn't need eye drops. The tears came on their own. The director said you'd reached a new emotional depth. You thought, yeah, maybe because this time I'm not acting. But over time, you began to feel emptied out. Not of ideas or energy, but of your very core. Like you were being wrung out like a towel, each film squeezing tighter and the water inside you getting less and less. You started keeping a journal. Not about anything grand, just small things. It rained today, the coffee at the old shop is still bitter. Dreamed of Mom. Those lines helped you feel like you still existed as a person, not just a body with a label constantly filmed. One day, you were sitting with a younger male co-star, 5 years your junior, complaining about obsessive fans. He asked, "You've been in this industry so long, aren't you afraid of being looked down on?" You took a sip of cold tea and said, "I used to be. But later, I only feared looking down on myself." You realized that the hardest part of this job wasn't the explicit scenes or society's judgment. It was keeping yourself from fading away. Keeping your heart from becoming a tool. Keeping your soul sensitive to the little things. A bird's song in the morning, a surprise hug, or just a quiet afternoon where no one calls. An old friend from high school sent you a message one day, asking how you were. You were surprised. The two of you chatted back and forth, sharing life stories, work stories. He asked, "Are you okay?" You were about to type, "I'm fine," but then erased it. You typed instead, "I'm surviving." And that was the truth. Not happy, not fulfilled, just still alive. One night, you came home late, stepped into your room, turned on the light, and saw the soft yellow glow fall on the chair your mom used to sit in. You stood still. Everything was quiet. No one waiting, no one scolding. Just you. And the truth that your life now was like a fast-forwarded reel of film, and you weren't sure if there would be a gentle ending written in for yourself. You turned 35 in silence. No cake, no party. Just a warm can of beer and the yellow glow of a desk lamp. In the mirror, you were still beautiful, but it was the beauty of someone used to enduring. A beauty that understands life doesn't always hand you the fair portion. You'd acted in over 200 films. Your name had been searched millions of times, but people only remembered your walk, your moans, and your expressions during the most artificial moments. No one knew you liked reading Tagore's poetry. No one knew you once dreamed of being a primary school teacher. No one asked, and you never told. Once, while filming in a rural area, you walked along a canal after a shoot. The air was gentle. There was the scent of freshly cut grass, the sound of frogs, and the soft golden light filtering through the trees. A little boy, about 8 years old, rode past on a bike, turned his head to look at you, and grinned. You smiled back, simply for no reason. And your heart ached, not with pain, but with a quiet longing. You were once a child like that, carefree, untouched by labels. You tried writing a script. No sex scenes, no moaning, no chain-smoking men or naked women, just a small story about a woman living alone in a tiny apartment, talking every morning to her cactus on the balcony. You sent it to a director you trusted. He read it, then asked one question. "Is this you?" You didn't answer. But deep down, you knew. It was the truest thing you'd ever written. And for the first time in all these years of working, you felt like you'd finally told something truly your own, something no one else could direct or write for you. After that, you became more selective. You turned down roles meant only to bait clicks. You lost job offers, lost a big chunk of income, but you slept better. No more waking from nightmares of being naked in front of a faceless crowd. No more being suffocated by the camera's lights. Instead, there was the quiet of a life that had tasted bitterness, and now just longed for peace. One day, someone called to interview you. They asked, "Do you regret choosing this path?" You paused for a moment, then softly replied, "What? Good as regret? I survived. You were folding laundry when you said that. On the TV, an old film of yours was playing. You looked at the young girl in it, who was once you, smiling stiffly in a dull scene. You didn't turn off the TV, but you didn't watch it either. You let the sound drift like a misplaced dream. The older you got, the less you felt the need to be understood. Silence became enough. Once you received a letter from a young girl just entering the industry. She wrote, "You were the reason I started, and also the reason I want to leave early." You smiled. It was the saddest compliment, but also the most honest. You didn't tell her to stay or leave, because you knew everyone must carry their own pain, just as you once did. One afternoon, you were sorting through an old closet. You found the shirt your mother bought you in high school. It was worn thin, but you had kept it. You hugged it to your chest, sat down on the floor, eyes closed. No tears, just a stillness, like a dried-up riverbed. You understood then that what truly remains in the end isn't applause or view counts or titles. It's the tiny things no one notices. An old shirt, a familiar scent, a memory that can't be returned to. You still live alone, still drink tea, still grow plants, still dream of your mother. But in your dreams, she's no longer frail. She's healthy, her hair silver, still scolding you for eating cold food. And in those dreams, you're not a JAV actress. You're just her daughter. The girl who once wanted to be a teacher, who got lost, and then tried her best to survive in her own way. You rest your head now, eyes soft with a haze of memory. Out there, the world keeps spinning fast. Clicks, cameras, names that come and go. But here, in the hush of this quiet moment, you breathe slower. You feel the weight of stories told and untold, stacked gently in your chest like folded letters no one will ever read. Maybe you're not her. Maybe you're just someone who needed to know she existed. That behind the names, the labels, the search, histories, there was a real person once. Still is. The fan hums low. A tea mug cools untouched on your nightstand. And outside the stars blink on, one by one, as if saying, "We see you. You did okay." So let the air settle. Let the light fade soft. And let that last thought linger with you. That sometimes surviving is more than enough. It's everything. Sleep easy, friend.